Welcome back to We Love the State, the state-sanctioned podcast, government's favorite podcast. We still haven't figured that out. This is episode 3 in a row where we have not nailed this down. I'm your host, Andy Coons. I'm sitting next to my badass host, Ben DeYoung. How you doing, Ben?
Doing good. I'm glad we made it up to the UP. We've got two Upers with us tonight. Well, one's shaking their head. I just I just dead named him with their, which is inappropriate. But anyhow, yeah, glad to be up here in the UP. We're doing the Michigan Libertarian Convention. This is the nominating convention where we nominate candidates for running in elections. So, and I think from what I've been told, this is the first convention in the UP. I think it is the first one in Michigan Libertarian Party history. So I heard that from a long-term member in the Lansing affiliate. So we're setting records. We are setting records. We are living the dream up in the Free State of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So let's introduce the couch to our left. First is Ryan Roberts, who I've been calling Ryan. Yeah, Deadpool, basically. Ryan Reynolds. I don't know why I've been calling you Ryan Reynolds this weekend. I think I probably, I've inherited it from somebody else who's been calling you Ryan Reynolds.
That would be me.
Okay, so the other Ryan. Ryan, please introduce yourself.
It's kind of funny because I want to say sometime last year at my job, I was recognized for like an employee recognition type of thing, and the lady wrote the newsletter for the hospital called me Ryan Reynolds. So I thought that was kind of funny, but yeah, some people just want to call me that, but it's Ryan Roberts.
Is it because of the striking resemblance?
Maybe.
Not just the Deadpool outfit.
Ladies can't keep their hands off. But no, my name is Ryan. I actually chair the Upper Peninsula affiliate. We're just a small affiliate here in the UP. Just a handful of rabble-rousers that want to promote liberty here in the UP. My friend here, Andrew Ranta, is part of that affiliate. And I'll give him the floor to introduce himself.
Like he said, I'm Andrew Renta. I'm from the UP. I am not a Uper because I was born in Wisconsin. That's right. That's how it works. You leave the state once, you're not a Uper. Anyways, I'm treasurer now. I'll be working on that. Hopefully get access to the bank account soon. Anyways, Ryan.
My name's Ryan Henry. I am from Oakland County, vice chair. Not a native Michigander, native Hoosier. Go Indiana. Fuck you guys.
You guys made Mike Pence. I'm still not over it.
We don't necessarily claim him. But yeah.
No, he's Indiana.
Yeah. Anyways,
first time, not long time.
That's true.
So here I am.
So I have to clarify, I'm actually not a native-born Uper myself. I'm actually a transplant as well from Lower Michigan, Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor area. So, but I've been up here for well over a decade. So this is my home.
I'm not even from this state. Came from Kansas, Oklahoma.
I think, yeah. Is anybody actually native born to Michigan?
Not even me. No, I was born in California.
You were born in Kansas, weren't you?
I was born in Kansas.
None of us are trained from the state. What are we doing here?
We all just need to leave.
I was raised in
immigrants.
Ironwood. They didn't have a maternity ward when I was born.
So you had to be delivered in Wisconsin or what?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Really?
So like, they had to drive all the way to Wisconsin,
Yeah,
so that you could be born.
the whole 30 minutes to Wisconsin.
I thought Indiana was podunk, but apparently UP is a different level podunk.
Podunker.
Yeah, it's
When I-
podunker.
When
You
I
got to go to
first-
the next state just to get delivered, man. Jeez Louise.
When I first moved up here, my family legit thought I was moving to like backwoods, like Tennessee, Smoky Mountain style hillbilly
Because
stuff,
you
and I was
were.
like, no, there's actually civilization up there. There is internet access, and there's phone service. And
Some of them
everything.
even got toilets
They're,
inside.
they're a few years behind tech wise, but they're catching up with the times.
So I think the main topic we want to talk about was the Trump assassination. I mean, that's
Attempted assassination.
attempted.
That mistake has been made a lot.
One,
Is it because you guys all like really want him to be dead so bad that it's like it's a Freudian
I'm pretty
slip
pissed
or
that I
what?
missed.
it would be a totally different United States, right? If that had been an assassination, right? Like,
I think that would be a better discussion of what happens if it actually would have happened.
let's talk both sides of the issue. Let's first talk about, was this just a random dude who got a ladder, who got
No
on a
way.
roof, and the CIA just kind of dropped the ball? Or yeah, Secret Service.
Secret Service, local police.
No way, dude. They were in the building
Below him.
below him. Like, has any human being been in a building with a metal roof before? Like,
We're in one right now. It's all the same type of metal.
And
like
this
how is
building
that
actually has a
possible that they
slanted
didn't
roof
know
as
somebody
well.
was on the roof?
Oh my God, keep the feds away.
Yeah.
I'll kill them.
We know no feds are gonna raid our house.
I think the memes have been glorious.
Yeah.
The memes have been glorious, but I again, there's so many of these like coincidences. It echoes Epstein, right? Like the guards fell asleep, the cameras malfunction. Like, I mean, we're seeing that replayed again, and I don't think. I mean, we're talking about half the country who are Trump's supporters. Are they believing this?
Okay. So let's go back a little bit about the whole RNC and the DNC pipe bomb situation, where
At Gen
we
6.
where we see an a cop that's not on duty, an off-duty cop, go up to Secret Service, alert them of a pipe bomb that he has seen. We see Secret Service promptly finish their lunch before they get out and address the pipe bomb situation, while the vice president is actually like less than 100 feet away.
They got a diabetic guy.
Are
on
we
that.
in a
They're like,
situation?
he's
So
gonna crash. If he doesn't
so-
get his
so
Blood
let me-
sugar comes first.
So I guess the point I'm trying to make is we're generally in the conspiracy theory realm where we assume the deep state is up to this no good, nefarious motive. Are we just in a world where Secret Service is so damn incompetent that a 20-year-old can scale a roof? I don't know. I don't think it seems like that is so off the wall that he's seen, he's spotted out, he's alerted, the authorities
was
are
seen
alerted
with a
for that.
rangefinder.
Yes, but
That
incompetence knows no
red
bounds.
flags of all red flags. Like, oh, he had a rangefinder. Why does he have a rangefinder?
But could
and then
we
he walked away from the magnetometer.
could we be in a situation where an organization like the Secret Service is now any other three-letter agency where they're completely incompetent, inept, and can't be
it
trusted to
incompetence?
do their...
Is it incompetence or
No, that's what I'm saying.
or
Is
it,
maybe
or
it is.
That's the best case scenario. Is that we're sitting here like these guys are so dumb. They're like,
Or
yes,
what if?
Yes, we're dumb.
What if
You know?
whoever controls the Secret Service just decided to give Trump the lousiest and poorly trained Secret Service agents that they could possibly?
Well,
like,
his
put on the
usual guys were sent on vacation.
Yeah, they were all given the day off, and so just out of coincidence, that day that they were all given because they been overworked and they were all given time off, and so this was a totally new Secret Service detail assigned on that day. And like again, there are so many. I mean, I really would push people to listen to Judge Andrew Napolitano's podcast. He's had some ex CIA, ex Secret Service people that have kind of like detailed the failures, and I use air quotes because I think what drives me nuts is listening to ex Secret Service, ex CIA, ex FBI, and they talk about failures, and it sounds so much like October 7th, right? And then we heard the same thing with the Palestinian invasion of Israel, and these were just failures. The highest militarized zone in the world, and these were just failures. And now we're hearing the same thing with Trump. These were just failure upon failure upon failure, and nobody says, well, it's not a failure. That was done purposefully. And I think we need to understand, like, whether it was something that was plotted and it was known in advance, or it was simply allowed to happen. But this is government agencies, the NSA, and like they have all communications across the board. Where they have AI that is interpreting messages. Like, how could this happen in a surveillance state that we have today without to just throw this into like, oh, oops, we messed up. It's I don't think that's an excuse.
So I guess what I was getting at is what's scarier is the fact that the Secret Service is completely inept, which I think is a real possibility, that this could just be a failure of process, a failure of procedure, a failure of a system, or it could be somebody on the inside working to make sure that weaknesses were exploited, or even a setup could be afoot. I think those scenarios are equally terrifying to me. That the American president is both under guard. Like, if I was Trump, dude, I'm going to the dude. Like, me and the guy that owns Blackwater are best friends right now, right? Like, I'm declining my Secret Service detail, except for like maybe one or two very, very head trusted guys that has that federal badge to flash,
Right.
and that's it. Like whether it's one or the other, I think it's equally bad.
Well, it just kind of
regardless.
It negates the RFK demand for he's been asking for Secret Service for the last 6 months, if not a year, and he's also preaching the Secret Service killed his father and his uncle, and then he wants them to guard his security. And then you see the ineptitude or purposeful negligence of the Trump issue. That's the last people I want to be looking out for my livelihood, right? So, like, what is this? It's almost like hiding behind the establishment, but also pointing a finger at the establishment. You can't have both. And so that's what makes me, I look at it as kind of like a divide. Either it was a planned and it was all an inside job. It was something that was known and allowed to happen, or it was complete incompetence. Like, I see it, I divide it into three categories. And to your point, they're all terrifying.
Right.
Because they all resulted in the future president, second term, literally turning his head to avoid a bullet.
Just the luckiest of like lucky streaks right there,
No, it's crazy. Like, had he not turned his head, I would be walking around with my vest on.
Yeah,
100% of the time.
Completely different.
Like,
country.
I don't know if I'd leave the house without my AR in my car.
So let's turn the table.
Yeah,
So
I
think
would like to discuss that.
we all agree it's either gross incompetence, it was allowed to happen, or was planned. Either way, end result is a different America, right? So let's say it happened, and his brains were blown out on national television. What would America look like today?
Nikki Haley would be the front runner up for the Republican nomination.
What would the result be of the Republican voters?
First of all, I don't think we make it to the election. If that assassination attempt was successful, his Trump supporters are like, and I don't mean any disrespect, but Trump supporters are like sycophantic almost. You know,
It's a religion almost.
yeah, exactly. And so it's like, dude, if they kill their savior, and like I get why they kind of have this sort of complex with him, is because he's the first person. You and I were talking about this on the way up here, but he was the first person who came from like the golden gates of Hollywood and like uber wealthy America, just like the elite status, who came down and like looked at regular people and was like, all these people in the news fucking hate you. You know, they think you're stupid. They think you're useless. They don't understand everything that you do. They don't understand everything that you've lost as this country brings in like all kinds of immigrants and all these horrible policies and spends all this money on all these wars. He's the first person from that elite class of people to look at regular people and say that shit. And so it's like, I get where they're coming from when they look at him and they don't care about all the other stuff. They don't care that he's a shill for Israel. They don't care that he sent the first weapons over to Ukraine. They don't care about any of that stuff. And they don't care about if he fucked a porn star, because he was the only person from that class that was like, you guys don't suck. You guys are actually the good guys here. So it's like, yeah, if his brains would have got blown out on stage.
He successfully picked up the working class person.
Yes.
Swooped him up because Hillary Clinton abandoned the working class.
Abandoned and
just
called them
swooped
deplorable.
Them all up and said, "Hey, I'm your guy.
Yeah.
Vote for me."
Yeah.
But if his brains got blown out, I mean we.
That's why. I guess what I'm saying is, if his brains got blown out, that's why his, no disrespect, slightly sycophantic followers would fucking pick up a gun. You know, I think we see January 6th, but the way that the left actually describes it instead of how it actually was. You know,
maybe at every state capital. Like, I mean, there's a potential for that, and that's what That's, I mean, we've talked a little bit. I know Ryan and I have talked about like a national divorce, right? What happens in a situation where the president's brains get blown out? That's, I mean, we've got January 6th in almost every state. Like, what happens? Because everybody knows at that point. I think the majority of Republican voters at this point know that this wasn't purely incompetence, because they've already known that Epstein wasn't just an accident. The stage has been set, right? So the incompetence vote, or the incompetence excuse, I think, is off the table for most Republican voters, or just the failure of the Secret Service. So his brains get blown out on television. I think, again, you got 50% of the country that goes, that was a CIA deep state hit. What do they do?
That is a very good question, because when was the last time the radical right was moved to action in this country?
Yeah.
So
Was he right leaning? It was after Waco.
Yeah,
It was directly because of Waco and Ruby Ridge.
It was Ruby Ridge, I think, more than anything. But one of the gentlemen that political,
didn't even realize what the heck was going on.
Oh, dude, it happened on my mom's birthday.
I was like a dumb kid. Like, what is all this stuff? My dad's.
I probably shouldn't have said my mother's birthday on here.
So-
Sorry, Mom.
So one of the guys that I listen to that's political commentator, one of the things that he's gotten after a lot recently is like the pendulum has swung so far left that there will be a fascist on the
Yes.
right
Yeah.
that is going to come and be the savior of the right. But in order to correct the pendulum swing, he's going to be so far right and actually fascist
Yeah.
that it's going to take a guy that is more ruthless and more courageous than Trump to achieve what Trump said that he was going to achieve from the right political perspective, right?
Mhm.
So the question of when was the last time that the right had a revolt is kind of pertinent because anybody have an answer to that question?
What?
I mean,
Like,
World War II Germany is an example I can think of. But after the Weimar Republic, this is something that that I've
So you're
been,
talking 80 years.
yeah,
So the left has had plenty of movements and outbursts publicly, both globally and in the United States. The right is always this festering,
thing that's like growing and
subdued.
under pressure, getting just more
Yeah,
and more
you
tension.
want to call it the silent majority, whatever you want to call it, but it's like
I've heard
it's
a lot of
when
people
you-
talk
when
about
you-
how
when
the
you
right
ask-
is always more reactionary than they are like. The
Visionary.
left always seems to be very proactive in what they're doing. And
but their president just almost got killed, and there's no riots on the streets.
yeah.
Hmm.
It's almost like the next news cycle is going to
Do you think?
eliminate it completely. So I guess what I'm getting at is we dodged a bullet. Pardon the pun, because the rights guy didn't get assassinated. But it's like, thank God we didn't, because it's almost like that was what it would take for the backlash that's almost necessary to correct the
do
Overton
you
window
think the
of
MAGA
the
movement,
of the right to
Do you-
push back on the left that was needed.
Do you think the MAGA movement would have taken violent action
Yes.
after the assassination? Of
I
Yeah.
think
Trump?
there's a good possibility of it, because what else?
To the extent of.
I mean,
the
how much
Summer of
how much
Love?
further? No, but what I mean, what else would have called for it?
Well, look at Twitter. Libs of TikTok basically putting anybody on blast
Yeah.
who said anything negative about Trump's assassination attempt. They're just like, "Oh, I wished he wouldn't have missed."
that was a very feminine response to that. You
no,
know,
for sure, but there was that response to it.
yeah,
Like, it's not as intense as what they've been doing for the last, I don't know, what year are we in, 2024?
Yeah.
Not
So the last
anywhere near
for
intense.
the last 10 years, nothing compared to that, but it basically swung that to be like, oh, yeah, we can pick on you guys now.
yeah, yeah.
It's inflammatory either way, and I think that's my concern. I've always been a big proponent of national divorce. I think if we can dissolve the United States peacefully, dissolve the federal government peacefully, break into individual sovereign states, maybe those states decide to form separate unions and trade blocs. My concern is we have so many people now like outcrying for violence. You've got Destiny, who is, championing the fact that we have one more dead Republican.
Most of that's coming from the left.
And it is. But if
not all.
Trump had been assassinated, that maybe have been a different story. And you may have seen the blaming of the left for the assassination and the calling for violence against the left in justification.
If I'll give Trump some credit, the reaction was actually not retaliatory. It was the more professional, more political way to go. If you watch the RNC speech,
right, but it was a miss. I think if it hadn't not been a miss, I think the reaction would have been very different. And I don't
rightfully so, though, right?
And
I
very
mean,
true. And maybe this, I don't know what the right would have done. You know, if their guy, 50% of Americans, their guy had his brains blown out on national television.
50% of Americans with 80% of the guns.
Right, but what are they going to do? Are they going to do?
No.
You know, are they going to burn streets down and probably not, right?
No, because I think
they burned down Capitol buildings.
I think that's
well, yeah, the people's property, which is much more appropriate. But
well,
I think
that's the thing
by
about
and
January
large,
6th versus the Summer of Love is they'd make January 6th sound like it was fucking 9/11, but Summer of Love went and attacked like private businesses and people's homes,
100%.
apartment buildings. You know,
the
and
people
when
went and burned down the people's property.
Yeah,
oh my
they
God!
went to the source of the issue.
Yeah.
So is the
but
consensus...
to your question, no, I think by and large the right is very much neutered. I don't think there would have been
riots
the
in the street.
backlash as if
killed?
somebody assassinated Barack Obama.
Oh yeah,
dude, I don't think there's a question to what would have happened to this country.
Right.
As if somebody would have. If the assassination on Donald Trump would have been successful, no. I think there's a much more neutered response on the right than there would have been on the left because the right is not capable of the unfettered emotional reaction that the left is not only not only capable of but accustomed to.
But what does that say about the again the kind of the neutered populace of the United States that
they're going to lose?
Well, the beautiful thing about Trump is he really inspired the anti-war movement, right? He really brought the right into the libertarian sphere in a lot of tonal ways, maybe not actual. Mm-hmm. He didn't do everything he said.
He warmed them up to our ideas.
But he said a lot of things. He just like we're not leaving Syria because of the oil. And the deep state was like, you can't say that. We're supposed to say you're there to spread democracy. Like, the results are the same, but the messaging was very different. And I think that's why the deep state is so anti-Trump, because they know he'll follow marching orders, but he's going to say he's following marching orders. Right. He's not going to message the right way. But the thing is, if you assassinate the guy that half of the United States is behind passionately to the point of almost like a religious fervor, and all they do is maybe some demonstrations on state capitals, that's not going to stop the deep state. To your point, I think earlier, then you're going to get a Nikki Haley that's the new nominee at the Republican convention, and the Republicans are be like, well, we're just not going to show up to vote.
I think it definitely is a turning point for the right and the conservative, but I don't think Donald Trump represents the conservative movement in this country, so I don't want to call it a conservative.
So you're saying movement. Like it would have been a turning point?
It would have been a turning point, and I think the right would have failed.
Do you think?
And I don't think they had the teeth for it.
Do you think so? Like if President Trump was somehow removed from the equation, what would, in your theory, what do you think would happen to the MAGA movement in America? Do you think it would just be passed on to somebody else to hold the baton, or do you think it would just slowly dissolve, kind of like the Tea Party movement in America?
I think for me personally, I think you would have seen probably a lot more protests at state capitals. And I think you would have seen a big national media propaganda push to say we need a lot more money and funds to go to, the NSA, the FBI, the CIA, because we have a big problem with domestic terrorists.
What if Barron Trump picks up that mantle?
Well, Barron Trump becomes Batman too.
Let's hope for Batman.
Is he like the youngest Trump?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's
If he was Batman, but he didn't do Batman's voice, he did Trump's voice. He's like, "I am vengeance. I am tonight."
That would be priceless. But I think that's the.
Everybody be like, "Yeah!"
But that's the neutered Republicans. You know, they're not an opposition.
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Yeah. That's I think that I mean they respect the institutions of government too much, and I think we've had these kind of discussions in the Libertarian Party with individuals like Justin Amash, who respects the Constitution and the institution of government so much that they are so reverent of those institutions, and that's a good, I think, a proxy for like Republicans is they're not going to be revolutionary. They are not going to burn shit down. They are not going to make waves. There's maybe a small contingency that would be, but that's not going to overthrow governments. And so, from my perspective, again, being very pro national divorce, I want Trump to win this November because I want California to succeed from the union. Because I think that is the only way we get a peaceful divorce and a breakup of the union is if the leftist states are the ones to initiate it.
You know, sorry, go ahead.
I guess, can I ask his question a different way? What if Trump was assassinated? What do you think should have happened on the right side? Instead of, what do we think the lame-ass neutered response would be from the right? What do you think should have happened? Like, what do you think is the appropriate corrective action to the other side assassinating your president?
That's hard to answer because it's like appropriate, like guessing the appropriate for something that's going to wind up being a very emotional response that's hard to predict. So I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is for that. You know,
if half the country said we're not paying taxes anymore,
Yeah.
go real revolutionary and say we're not sending our kids to public schools anymore.
But then they just audit those people and send those people to jail. Because
Maybe.
the
That's
government.
not something
But-
they'd
but-
come up with. That's something libertarians would come up with. Oh, we're gonna stop paying taxes. Like I've thought the same thing with when they're drumming up the for war with Iran. It's just like, oh, I'm gonna just like not do withholding tax, and it's just like, yeah, Republicans aren't doing that because Trump got shot.
And I'm
that's
saying
not a thing.
that would be the response I would hope for, but I would never see Republicans because they are the law-abiding, back the blue civilians.
But I guess what I'm saying is modern day JFK. My father is gonna turn
Old.
69 or 70 this year. 69 this year. Nice. He's told me for my entire life JFK was killed by the CIA and the mob. My entire life. I've grown up with this man that has understood that the government has killed the president. So, and I've always wondered, that's when we lost our country, right? When the government killed their own fucking president right in front of their eyes, and we did absolutely nothing. We didn't burn down the White House. We didn't burn down Washington, D.C. That's when we lost our country.
Well, I think Ron Paul talked about that. He said the Republic died when we established the Federal Reserve, and democracy died when JFK was assassinated.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, Trump actually being killed would have been a second coming of that. Do you think the American people react to that with more vitriol or more compliance? I think it's more compliance. Unfortunately, I don't think it's more vitriol.
Half would have applauded, and the other half would have been like, "Oh shucks."
Yeah.
I think, dealing with the two different time scales and information and technology and everything that's out there now, I would probably lean more toward, there's obviously people that would have been like, okay, yeah, this is, they would have been like, okay, this was all just like planned out or whatever, like the CIA had something involved with it, and the other half would have been like, no, this was random, it wasn't plotted out, but it's really just going to come down to like information, what type of information people are going to consume. Uh, the internet's out there. People can read. People can research. People can do all kinds of that stuff now. So I think it would have been a little bit different. I don't think people would have necessarily been more compliant in this if this were to happen.
If he had been killed.
Yeah.
What do you think? All right, let's hit the fast forward button. We're talking in July. Does Trump make it to November? First question. Second question, if he does make it to November.
As far as, does he live till November?
Yep.
Okay.
So if he lives to November, I think we can all agree that no one will accept the results of the election.
Yep.
So what does that do to the country? Is that a net positive, net negative? I mean, I think if you're coming from like a Michael Malice perspective, like he's wet himself multiple times because it really shows a light on the fact that the government is illegitimate in the election process. In democracy as a whole is illegitimate. But is that a net positive, net negative? What happens if Trump survives? Whether he wins or loses, again, like I said, I think we can all agree that half the country is going to be like, we don't agree. There was it was Putin, whatever it was not a legitimate election.
I mean, that was kind of the case with the 2020 election, right?
But this is going to be
half the
amplified.
Country literally, like half the country literally did not believe that Joe Biden won that election. And I mean, you saw like the memes that were coming out with like all these graphs where like the huge increase in numbers of votes for Joe Biden.
But this started in 2016, right? Like the Hillary campaign, like this is an illegitimate election.
No question that Trump beat Hillary.
2020, but then the illegitimacy just kind of got ramped up, right? We're on a ramp up of illegitimate election. It started in 2016.
It started in 2000 with Bush Gore.
You're right. It kind of teased the hanging chads, but there wasn't an outrage, right? Because even though
there was an outrage,
there was, but it was so mild because there was because to your point, I think Gore won. Maybe it was one of the first times Gore won the public. But then Bush won the Electoral College.
And Florida was the contested state, and Jeb Bush was the governor of Florida at the time, so it was his brother baking the cake.
So it painted the illegitimacy of elections, right? It set the stage. And then you had Trump beating Hillary, which was all the polls said couldn't happen, and they had to spin the story of it's Russia. And then you had, Trump losing to Biden, and then they had to spin the story of this is all based on write-in votes, how many dead people were voting, and because of, COVID, anybody could just sign a ballot, and ballot harvesting became very popular on the left. And now we have ballot harvesting being standardized in 2024. So you already know the right is going to just say, we don't believe the electoral result unless Trump wins, right? So we're to the point now where left or right, there is no belief in the legitimacy of the democratic process. And I think some of us who are more, ANCAPs, that's a good thing.
Kind of looking forward to that.
That's a good thing, right? But what does that do to social cohesion, social unrest. I mean, it really opens the door to anything goes. And to my, earlier points about national divorce, like I want that to happen. I want it to happen peacefully, but are we too far gone for that to happen peacefully?
Here's my thoughts on it. Like we see things from a different perspective from a lot of people. When I see your typical like Republican voter or your Democratic voter, they still believe, like, even though, so like the Democrats, they believe that the democratic process is still a legitimate way. They believe that everything is standard and normal, and we shouldn't be cheating and things like that. And then you have Republicans who saw many Republicans who saw that, oh, well, there's a lot of cheating going on with this election process. We need to do what we can to change it and make things right again. So we're going to change the voting laws. So there's still the vast majority of people that believe that the democratic process can work, but they have to make it work
in their favor,
or they have to fix it in some way.
Right.
So that, like, we have to follow the Constitution. We have to follow, like, all of these election laws. We have to change election laws to make it better. So, like,
to make it fair.
The whole problem with the whole problem with it all is that they keep just wanting to slap Band-Aids on an already flawed system. Keep slapping Band-Aids on, like, a gushing wound.
Right.
It's just, like, how do you convince people to make them realize that when people crave power, when groups of people crave power especially, how do you truly stop that gushing wound?
Well, and also, when does that gushing wound become septic? And when is it not a gushing wound? You're treating a corpse. And I think every election we've seen since Gore v. Bush kind of like started the illegitimacy top discussion, and it has manifested itself ever since. I mean, every election, that discussion, and again, the democracy is the body, and the fact that every election, like, the body becomes more and more. I think it's. I don't remember who made this comment, but it was like Biden is the perfect example of the United States empire. It is a corpse, a walking corpse that is incapable of actually making decisions. It's on autopilot for self-destruction.
Yeah. I really don't think there's much democracy going on right now. Like, to me, it seems like it's all just an illusion of people thinking that they're voting for whoever that they want to be their leaders, but it's really just these giant corporations that are controlling the narrative and giving us this illusion of a choice.
Well, and I think Ron Paul made that again, like, the Republic died when the Federal Reserve was established, and democracy died when the government decided who was going to be president when they assassinated JFK. And I think the general public, thanks to the internet especially, and something that's not been in the purview of central control as much as they want to, has, the corpse has been exposed more and more every election, which I think is good. But what does that do to social unrest? And that's where, like, again, no matter the outcome of this election in November, half the country will say it's bullshit. We do not believe it. And what are they going to do about it? Because we know the left, we know what they're capable of, and we know the right, and we know what they're incapable of, to say that mildly. But what does our country look like after November?
I have no idea.
I don't either. I mean, it's going to be a toss-up, and that's where I hope Trump wins, because I think the outcome will be a lot less a lot more peaceful and a lot less damaging. Because if Trump loses to a corpse, if Biden goes through this, and that's a big unknown at this point. But let's say,
I mean, we're already talking about, like, there's all these, I mean, media, everything's talking about how he might even drop out by the end of the weekend, or through the weekend he might drop out of his, and they might open up the entire DNC convention to a whole new candidate.
right, a whole slate of candidates, right? It could be a complete open election at the convention, and that's I kind of, if I'm going to look in my crystal ball, that's what I'm thinking.
Beware of Gretchen Whitmer in that case.
Right, the
Yeah.
Gretchen Whitmers and the Gavin Newsom, that's
Who's worse?
No,
Who's worse?
Gretchen Whitmer,
Gretchen
because
Whitmer or
she might
Newsom?
actually beat Trump.
There's a
so?
possibility.
Gavin Newsom would get his ass kicked. Gretchen Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer,
Gretchen
They were
Newsom.
both grown in the same
Hey,
lab. It's all right.
basically.
I
But
was,
Whitmer actually
I was
might be able to beat
listening
him.
I was listening to Dave Smith's podcast earlier, and he was talking about how the Biden campaign wouldn't even endorse Kamala Harris to
That's
elevate
correct.
to the presidency.
Yep.
So, like, what if it is Gretchen Whitmer and Gavin Newsom on the presidential?
I've been
vice
saying
presidential
that for a
ticket?
year.
A
I
Whitmer
would really
Newsom
hate to
ticket?
be right.
Oh,
I would really hate to be right, but I've been saying that for over a year now.
yeah.
Are there any other prominent, like, Democrats
No.
that are, like,
The
running
Shapiro
that could-
guy from Pennsylvania,
Ben
just because
Shapiro?
Josh Shapiro, I think,
Probably cut from a similar cloth.
but he's the governor of, I think, Pennsylvania. But the only thing that makes him relevant is he's from a swing state. He's a governor from a swing state.
Well, and it's just like Gretchen is riding a wave of a surplus. I mean, we've, good or bad, past Republicans.
She could win him. She could win the Michigan though.
But
which is
right,
a big thing.
but she hasn't buried the state yet. I mean, the state is bleeding out, but it's nowhere
Correct.
near California, right? She's California
No,
5.
She's somehow popular in Michigan.
We're 5 years. 5. We're California 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But we know the future of her policies is going to be California.
Yeah.
But we haven't reached it, and so she hasn't, crossed the Rubicon. She hasn't broken the dam like Gavin, because Trump could just state facts
Right.
and kill Gavin. But I just, Gretchen, man,
So
can you imagine? I mean,
okay.
the benefit is she's no longer our governor.
So here's the thing that I've been thinking about for the past few days. If I'm the Democrats, I might actually think that this is a little bit of a blessing in disguise. I'm going to lose this election. When Trump got shot in the ear or failed assassination attempt, he kind of won right then and there.
Right.
Right? Especially with the reaction and everything. Like, every Democratic operative at that point was like, we're going to lose.
But everybody knows there's
We're
a
gonna
recession coming.
And everybody knows there's a recession coming. That's a very good point. So, if I'm a Democratic operative, what do? I get Biden to step aside because he's rancid. I get him, whether he endorses Kamala or not, I get Kamala to be the one that actually runs, because we know whoever's going to run is going to get their butts kicked. So we might as well put Kamala out there, the DEI
Right.
candidate. Let her get her butt kicked, and then it's reset, and you can actually go to your real bench and go to a Gavin Newsom or a Gretchen Whitmer in 2028 and try to have a real chance.
And that's a shoo-in.
So
if
the
the recession
way I look
hits,
at it is like, if the Democrats want to just say, okay, we've lost the 2024 election, they get to basically kind of push aside the two people that they've wrongfully elevated as the leaders of their party and put up some legitimate minor leaguers that would have a chance in 2028. I think it's a golden opportunity for them to actually eliminate old man Biden and cackling Kamala at the same time.
My concern is the fact that they've painted Trump into such a Hitler that they have caused such panic in the states. And but I
not affording groceries negates all of that.
That's true. I agree. Like if a recession, like if they can get this economy to limp along.
But to your point, Trump is going to win, and then the economy is going to crash because the economy is going to crash.
Right.
You can't print $8 trillion in the last 3 years and it not come back to bite you in the ass. Like, this cannot hold.
Right.
Trump's going to try to. The Fed's going to try to. Everybody's going to try to
They're going to
put a bunch of lipstick on the American economy.
It's going to, like, interest rates go back down to zero.
We've printed way too much money, dude. This cannot sustain.
And that's what Trump's going to do.
To your point, Trump is going to try to, but
juice the economy, which is going to drive inflation up the wall.
Unless he appoints a Federal
Reserve chair,
favorable Federal Reserve chair, it's not going to matter.
We need a Volcker on steroids, but that's going to throw the economy into a recession like we haven't seen since the 1920s. Mm-hmm. This is a no-win scenario. And to your point, I mean, like, if I'm a Democratic strategist, that's exactly one. I want Trump to win because now the recession's on his watch. Mm-hmm. And we can point the finger. It's all Republicans. This has all started under his first term. Great. But I see the Democratic states like California being like, all right, we're out. We're seceding. Because that was the talk. California. That was a big talk around Trump's first.
They always
election.
Talk like that, but they really can't survive without federal funding. So
true.
There's no teeth there.
That's true. There definitely isn't any teeth. But I wonder.
We bailed their pension plan out how many years ago for billions of dollars,
and they're so much more underwater.
And they've done nothing but gone in the hole since. So. They can claim the GDP all they want. They can claim being the fifth largest economy in the world all they want.
I think it's about the conversation.
It's about P&L when it comes down to running a state. I mean, they don't have their P&L in order.
Yeah, to the black and whites, the brass taxes. I mean, the bottom line, they couldn't survive without the United States. But they could have that conversation. And I think you get more and more states understanding that national divorce is a acceptable and potential.
No, like I would like I said, I would really like to have this conversation with you separately on another podcast because I think it's
just national divorce and
because I think it's a ridiculous notion.
Yeah, I love the
idea. I think it's a city versus rural
argument
and not a state by state argument. So I don't know how you do any kind of national divorce when you're talking the people who feed people versus the people that live on top of people.
Consumers versus providers.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. That would be a great separate conversation.
Because, where do the swing states go? Like Illinois, right? Illinois is a historically blue state. Get out of Cook County and northern Illinois. Illinois is very much a red state. So how does Illinois...
Well, look at Michigan.
Michigan's
UP is
less extreme example because at least Michigan you have the Tri-County area, and then you have Lansing, and then you have Grand Rapids, and a little bit of Traverse City. But it's the same thing, right? Like, you can't say that if we have a national divorce that Michigan's going to end up on the communist side because most of Michigan is not going to go that way. So
outside of Detroit and Grand Rapids, right?
Yeah, so how does that work? When you have a national divorce, but yet states themselves it's still a rural versus urban divide.
Right.
You can't solve a rural urban divide by state.
Not along state lines.
No, not at all. And you can't solve it because the rural feeds the urban. the rule doesn't give a crap about what the urban provides the rule. The urban gives a fair amount of crap about what the rule provides the urban, right? If the rule doesn't get the next Android Auto upgrade, they don't care.
You might have to like look at county lines instead of state lines.
Yeah, I mean, like it would really like, let's say like
it's going to be the providers versus the takers.
Like hypothetically, like if the federal government were to dissolve, magically at some point, that all the states would be left to their own devices, and eventually the states wouldn't have the power to control their counties anymore. Like the counties and the people in those counties and everything else would have to start making decisions on how they're going to govern themselves, without the state. I mean, but this is all hypothetical talk here,
right.
Because,
but the beauty,
none of this would ever happen.
the beauty of the way that we were set up is it was supposed to be kind of like a federalism perspective where like government should be as close to the people as possible. And that's why they set up like counties, villages, cities, and municipalities so that they can run independent of a centralized authority. And could we regress back to that? I think we have the institutions in place to do that. Would the citizens be willing? That's a different story. So,
and would the government be willing to allow that to happen?
Right, and if it weren't, like, what would be the situations where they wouldn't even have a choice in the matter?
I think by and large, the government wouldn't need to oppose it. I don't think the people are palatable.
And that's when culture is
we've grown far too comfortable and worshiping to our opulence to become a pushback revolutionary society we're
very decadent. Very decadent. Yeah. All right.
We've lost our rebelliousness.
I totally agree, and I think I'd love to continue the conversation as far as national divorce, maybe on the next podcast. So if you like this type of like rabbit hole, I'd love to go down that at some point.
I'd love to talk about it, not tonight, because I've fallen asleep 6 times during this episode.
And if you can put Andy asleep,
no, I've been awake since 2:30 in the morning, so I'm tired. No, but like I think it'd be cool to talk about the parallels between like America today and the Weimar Republic, and between World War I and World War II. To me is like a not exactly 1-to-1 scale, but man, it's close to
what happens when a currency collapses?
Yeah. What happens when a currency collapses and there is just decadence and moral collapse everywhere.
Right.
But another time,
another place.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody who's jumped into this conversation. Thank you all for your participation in this conversation.
For real.
Love these type of like multiple perspectives. Hope we can do this more often. The fact that we all get to hang out in a libertarian perspective in an event like this is really cool. Hopefully, again, we can do this outside of just, state conventions. So thanks everybody who are tuned in and listening, watching. Thanks for all the participants who joined us on the podcast.
Follow us on Twitter, Andy_Coons.
Picture this, 1979.
Yeah.
And always check out for the Libertarian Party of Michigan. We're on all the social media channels as well. So check us out, and we really appreciate the continued support and listeners.
All right.